All right, let's talk oil changes. So the gold standard used to be 3,000 miles or 3 months, whichever comes first. And that was just parroted. Basically every manufacturer seemed that was the standard for oil changes. And then we started getting the synthetic oils and the blend oils, and nowadays it seems like a lot of the manufacturers are saying 5,000, 7,000, 7,500 or whatever. Some of them even have a thing on the dash that supposedly calculates when you need an oil change, supposedly bases it on your driving and your idle hours and all that other stuff. And so people just change whenever that pops up. And for me, the Chevy Avalanche has that, and I want to say that it pushes it in the 5,000 to 8,000 mile range before it suggests an oil change. Honestly, you can't change your oil too often. You could literally change it every time you drove. Now that would be very expensive and arguably environmentally very unfriendly, but certainly not bad for your vehicle to do that. Back in the 90s, I had a Mustang GT, and I drove the heck out of that thing. I was young and dumb and full of lead foot. And that car went with me to the drag strip, to the autocross track. I even drove it on the Texas DPS training track. Statutes of limitations have all run, but I may or may not have also driven it very aggressively on the streets, frequently redlining the engine, frequently flooring it off the line at red lights that turn green, stop signs, or anybody that pulled up next to me and was doing the same. My point is that car was driven hard, arguably harder than any police car ever gets driven. Young, lead-footed man driving at the time, one of the higher horsepower vehicles on the road, and I took full advantage. The other thing I did throughout that time was I was changing oil every 1,500 miles. Back then, I don't even think there was synthetic oil yet. If there was, it was rare and very expensive. But I just changed with the typical, I think it was 10W30 back then that was the spec. Conventional oil with whatever the filter was recommended. Gotta love that sound. So anyway, as I got more and more into performance, and I was looking at the options of doing supercharging or whatever, I settled on doing a stroker, and I found a reasonably priced, ready-built stroker motor. So I bought that and made a deal with the folks that became LMR to basically swap the engine for me, because they had the tools and the knowledge and I didn't have either at the time. Arguably still don't, but regardless. Anyway, they told me that when they took that engine apart to do whatever they were going to do to it, it still had the factory cross hatchings inside the cylinders. So it was basically like a brand new motor, even though it had probably 50 or 60,000 miles on it at that point. Like I said, those were hard driven miles. I was not shy about redlining it. I was not shy about bouncing it off the rev limiter in first gear just to see what would happen when it did it. I mean, just all sorts of stuff like that. Like I said, not to mention pretty much always flooring it to get up and go. I never drove that thing slow or cautiously. So I attribute that to the oil changes. And I think that's one of the things that's so important, is if you are maintaining your vehicle and changing out the fluids like you're supposed to, or maybe even sooner than what's required, you're going to get a lot better use out of your vehicle, even if it is driven pretty hard. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.